And we are live. And I should say that I apologize for the tardiness of this broadcast. And I believe it's not actually Rebecca's fault, it's my fault.
Hey, first time ever. This is
Yeah.
something like this is not my fault. I'm so happy.
Yeah. So it's not Rebecca's fault. I got the time in Idaho wrong. I think maybe I was looking at Seattle. Are you guys in the same time
we're
zone as
we're
Seattle?
we're in the same time zone. It's Pacific Standard Time.
Geez, Louise and Joseph. Well, I think I must have got it wrong because it's quite late where I am. It's
I'm
approaching 4
sorry.
a.m. Well, you
Thank
don't
you
have to
for
apologize.
accommodating me. I do
No, I mean
appreciate it.
it's well, it's Thanksgiving, so thanks for accommodating me.
Oh, of
Now,
course.
I should introduce you to my audience. I think most people probably know who you are. This is Blonde in the Belly of the Beast, and her name. Can you give an explanation for your name? I know what it is, but maybe you could probably do it
Sure.
better than I could.
Boy, I regret choosing such a long moniker, but I didn't think my YouTube channel was ever going to go anywhere. And I was living in Seattle at the time, and I shouldn't have identified myself by my hair color. I hate all of it, but it's just too late to rebrand, and I'm doxxed. So it doesn't really matter. My name is Rebecca. I no longer live in Seattle, so a rebranding is definitely in order. But yeah, I was just living in this liberal hellscape during my political awakening, and I started my YouTube channel as a cathartic effort to get my depressed mental health situation under control because the world around me was crumbling, and it kind of turned into this, and here I am, six plus years later, I think. Yeah.
Well, I know exactly what you're talking about vis-a-vis Seattle. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I know you're from St. Louis, is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
From Missouri. Yeah, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and I remember Seattle being a great city when I was a kid. And my brother, he lives in Seattle now, and he utterly despises the place.
Oh
Absolutely
no.
despises it. His wife has a job at the moment with the government, and therefore they're kind of, I guess,
Locked in.
they're locked in. I mean, government jobs are what happens at the end of civilizations and empires. Everyone scrambles toward
Everyone's got
working.
a government job. Yeah.
Everyone wants a government job because they're the most stable you can possibly have. But he's exactly the same way. He said to me, I mean, the moment he can get out of that place, I mean, he's chomping at the bit to leave Seattle. And especially given what's happened to the place over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, you have to imagine back in the 1990s, Seattle was a great city. It probably would have been one of the best cities you could live
Right.
in the United States. And I really have no idea how well, I do have a lot of ideas. I mean, we can get into that as the day goes, or the chat goes on, as it were. And again, I should apologize to everybody. It was my fault for getting the time zones incorrect. And so blame this guy. So now, so how should I address you? Should I, Rebecca?
Yeah,
Now,
sure.
Rebecca, you and I have been chatting for years now. I would say.
Mhm.
I mean, I've been
Yep.
on your channel a few times, and yeah, I am showing my face at this time. I've been doxxed by the likes of Right Wing Watch and a whole bunch of other sort of Antifa associated groups. And I figure, well, I mean, everybody has a face, and so do I. Yeah. So, what I would like to ask you about right now is, I mean, how's your Thanksgiving going? Have you given out any smallpox blankets yet?
I do every year. I find,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
only
Yep.
indigenous person living in North Idaho, and I make sure to reinfect them with smallpox on an annual basis. I'm just doing
Over and
my,
over again. I mean, I
over
imagine
and
you're
over
looking for
again.
anyone that you possibly could that
Right.
might identify as Native American. I mean,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
you use the term First Nations in Idaho, or is that
No,
just a
no.
Canadian thing?
They say Native Americans here, but I, of course,
Native
won't
American.
say that.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
say
it's
American
changed.
Indians if that.
It's changing in Canada, in the sense that in Canada they basically are using First Nations, and I should say that now this year was the first year that Canada is now celebrating its first Truth and Reconciliation federal holiday. So
Oh, it's so
the
gay.
so the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, or the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, or I don't know exactly, but it's a South African term that was used first, to denote post-apartheid crimes that were committed against different sorts of people. And it's been adopted now in Canada as the de facto holiday for the country. So yeah, so Canada's now, and they're changing the linguistics of it all. And I don't, I'm pretty sure probably Mr. Trudeau has given, the substitute drama teacher with all of his glory has given a nice speech crying. Now he has this propensity and penchant for getting on stage, which is actually the House of Commons, and he'll sit there and he will cry and
Ugh.
talk about the horrible legacy of settler smallpox blanket infecting Canada. So yeah, I mean, you guys are still using, so we it's still called the Department of Indian Affairs in Canada, but it's just one kaleidoscope of retardation after another. Let's just put it
Oh
that way.
gosh. Gosh, it's
Yeah,
so funny that crying in front of women is now a sexual strategy, an effective
yeah,
sexual strategy. How is that even
yeah.
possible? Ugh.
It gets him votes. It gets him votes.
Ugh. Gross.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
it,
Canadian
it
women
is.
seem to find him attractive or something. There's like
Well,
a
he
whole
has
Reddit thing on his
luxuriant
butt.
he
Yeah.
has luxuriant hair.
Is that it? Is that all it takes?
He's got a pretty fabulous lisp. Have you
Ugh.
ever heard Justin talk? He's just got this amazing lisp, and he just it just brings the women to him.
Oh God.
Yeah. So Thanksgiving. Now I should say I grew up mostly in Canada, but I am an American citizen. And Canada being part, so a lot of people have this misunderstanding about what is Canada, what is the United States. Canada are basically the colonies that didn't revolt against the crown. And so in Canada, Canada also has a Thanksgiving celebration because Thanksgiving goes back to before the creation of the United States as a country. And the only thing is that the harvest period in Canada is earlier because it's colder,
Right.
and the Thanksgiving is in October in Canada. And I'm sure Justin probably got on there, was crying, not for the turkeys, mind you. He was probably crying because there was some kind of I don't know. He cries for whatever. I mean, the last one I saw him crying for, it was fabulous. So during the Cold War, um, people that were homosexual were generally not allowed in sensitive positions within the intelligence community because they felt that they could be more
The blackmail
prone.
potential. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And he literally got up there in front of the House, which would be the equivalent of Congress, and started crying. And this was done
Ugh.
before he was born, mind you. All of these policies were done before he was born. So yeah, that's kind of where we are in Canada Stan or Commie Canada. But anyway, so how are things with you, Rebecca?
Oh, they're lovely. About 3 years ago, I moved to North Idaho. I left Seattle, and that was such
Mm.
a huge relief. And then I had a baby, and I'm married. I got married at some point. And life has just changed so drastically over the last few years. It's so much easier to weather this post nation storm when I'm not surrounded by all this liberal idiocy. I do get a lot of neocon garbage in my area. There's a lot of Trump worship and things like that. And he's going to come back in 2024 and save us all. But there is a good community of dissident right folks in North Idaho that makes it feel like everything isn't so bleak. And I just don't think I would be in the same place mentally if I were still living in Seattle. It was just such a disaster. And back to the point
Well,
about Seattle, when I left Los Angeles in 2013 and I visited Seattle, Seattle was there were not very many homeless people. It was beautiful and idyllic and clean. And this is in
this is
2014.
how I remember it when I was growing up.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And by
Yeah.
2017, I had to leave. There's like a hobo taking a dump on my doorstep, and my
Hmm.
dog stepped on a hypodermic needle, and all this crazy stuff happened. And they weren't prosecuting people for any petty or drug crimes. And the homeless population in the few years that I lived there, it must have
Ballooned.
yeah,
balloon.
increased tenfold, and it just became unlivable within 3 years. So North Idaho is just it's been a really welcome change for sure.
Well, so that sounds really good. I mean, how long have you been in Idaho? I mean, I know, but I'd like to know. I think our viewers might be interested in knowing.
Yeah, it's been 3.5 years. And when I moved here, things were just dirt cheap, but I saw the writing on the wall for Seattle, and so I'm very proud of my
Are they
foresight. Oh,
Californiaing your
it's a disaster.
Idaho?
Yeah, definitely. It's a huge problem, influx of Californians. They're bringing all their liberal policies. And so I'm not super gung ho about engaging in local politics because I do feel like it's lost to some degree. Uh, I don't really know where I stand on the participation in the political sphere on any level at this point. People are really on my case, like, you have to engage in local politics. You have to change the community from the ground up. But I feel like, can you even
How,
really do that?
well,
Can you?
but the community can change within. It could turn on a dime, depending
Mhm.
on what happens. I mean,
Right.
I mean, for example, I believe it was in a lot of communities that are what are called not so diverse, is where President Biden is talking about dropping in the refugee populations
Oh,
that are
yeah.
being imported
Somali
into the country.
refugees and
Yeah,
Afghan
well, I mean,
refugees incoming.
bringing in the massive diversity, and pretty soon you won't have the whole community that you've been trying to build. Is kind
Exactly.
of what I'm
Yeah.
getting at. And
Yeah.
this is, I mean, so for example, as you have, I mean, to be honest, I mean, you would call what you've done traditionally, it would be called white
White
flight,
fly. Mm.
and you've flown over to Idaho. But in a sense, do you feel as though that you will be able to not hold the line, but do you feel that you have separated yourself from a community, that being Seattle, that you didn't want any part of anymore, and you've moved to a place that you felt that you could be a part of, but can that last?
Short answer is no. I don't think so. But the thing that people aren't understanding about the native community of North Idaho, they are truly a rugged people. I'm sure you've seen the footage of the threat of Antifa in 2020. There were people with AR-15s outside of every single business downtown, and there was no police presence here. The police just allowed them, the militia, to kind of govern the town, and nothing happened. So there is this kind of quality here where if things get a little dicey, if there's too much of this hipster Antifa thing going on, I truly believe people would take up arms. And it's going to be hard to root out that element of the population, no matter how liberal it gets here. But on a personal level, I can't get pushed any further inward. I'm locked in here. I'm not moving again. I'm just not going to do it. At some point we do have to stand our ground. I grew up in St. Louis and like I'm not dealing with this Midwest weather. I'm not going to get handed the crappiest parts of this country because liberals keep pushing me further inward. So at some point I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm staying here and we're just going to have to weather the storm. I'm not moving again. And then hopefully we can go back and retake California where the weather's awesome.
Well, the that's kind of an interesting point about standing your ground and people having, the Second Amendment. And what I would
Mm.
counter that with is, let me just find this, is there has been one of the biggest terrorist attacks in the United States over, I can't remember the last time that it was this big. There was a peaceful protester that chose to drive his truck of peace, his SUV of peace, through a parade in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And let me just bring up my screen share here, and I just want to just show this. I'm going to share that, and I'm going to throw that here. And what you'll notice is that the next day, this is the front of CNN. It's all about Ahmed Arbery
Mhm.
and, oh, old racist tropes of demonizing victims won't work. And Britain and France escalate war after Channel tragedy because they've had 30 fucking thousand people cross the English Channel from France because France is the new Syria, right? France, you know, because it's so unsafe for people to be in France, they've got to get on boats to England. It has nothing to do with the handouts that the British provide. Now, this is not only CNN, it's MSNBC. You take, oh, they just changed it. Hold on a sec. Nothing is being said on this. Now, my question to you is it seems to me that there is no limit to the amount of, let me just get rid of that. There is no limit to the amount of abuse Americans are ready to take, and that's not a fault of Americans. That is
Isn't it though? Isn't it?
Canadians, Australians, and we can get into that vis-a-vis the COVID lockdowns and what have you. But there seems to be no limit to the abuse that people are willing to take from their government, and it's in tandem with their academia, with their centers of education, also with their media. I mean, the media at this point now, I can't even come up with a better description for the media other than the enemy of the people.
Oh, yeah.
And looking at that right now, there's 6 people that are dead. One of them was a child at this point,
I think
and
several were
there's
children. Yeah.
several children. I'm not exactly sure how many people were injured. It's in the double digits,
Mhm.
and it's completely been memory hold already.
Mhm.
And they're
Yeah.
still talking about. Let me bring that back. Well, no, let me do that again. I'll bring it back. They're still talking about Kyle Rittenhouse.
I know.
So, all right, I'll bring that back in a second. But my point being is how much is there a line in the sand? See now, for example, I thought vis-a-vis the UK. So I should say that I've just gotten back to Tokyo. I was in Europe from June till a couple of weeks ago, and I just got out of quarantine here. And when I was there in the UK, and it was good because the UK was definitely in better shape than anywhere I've been. I mean, nobody's wearing masks on the train, on the bus, anywhere,
Really?
and nobody. No, it's
Mm.
just normal life in the UK, and I'm literally looking at turning around and going back to live there because I think things are getting worse. It's the Florida of Europe. But my point is that I always thought that once children are being violated, that would be the red line
Right.
for people. But what I've seen in the UK is that they have entire cities up and down the country where thousands and thousands of their children are being sexually exploited.
Oh, I thought you were talking
And
about the COVID mandate, but I guess it applies as
no, but
well
my
to children.
yeah, well, we can get into that too. But I mean, is there a red line at this point? Is my question to you.
I believe last time you were on my channel, we talked about the Molly Tibbetts thing, but that was a really pivotal time for me because I always thought, if an illegal immigrant comes in and rapes somebody's child, like maybe that will turn things around on a cultural level. But Molly Tibbetts' dad was like, "But what about the fucking tacos or whatever?" It was just astonishing for me, like that people weren't like more outraged that an illegal immigrant had done this. So at that point, I realized that people were going to offer up children at the altar of this leftist initiative. I mean, they have, haven't they? And then when all this COVID stuff happened, I wasn't holding out hope that they weren't going to come for the kids. I'd already lost hope in that. I will say that
They're coming after what is it, 5 to 11 year olds
5 to
now?
11-year-olds, yeah,
Yeah.
and there was, like, this Elmo bit where Big Bird talked about what it's like to get the vaccine and how he's keeping other people safe and other children safe.
Are you
It's
kidding? They're
No, it's
dragging
straight
Sesame Street
propaganda.
into this.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Big
Sesame Street
Bird,
is
Oscar the Grouch.
multiracial garbage now, it's
Uh,
terrible.
are you fucking serious?
I know.
Excuse my French. Oscar the Grouch, Grover, Cookie Monster, Big Bird. Is that what are you being serious?
Oh yeah, it's really depressing. So I think that children are kind of, as a society, do we really protect them if we're going to vaccinate them for something that's it's not dangerous to them anyway? Like, no, I doubt it. I will say the one white pill I have about American culture is, logistically, it would be too difficult to get everybody's guns from them. It would have to be an exchange type thing, and I don't think that anybody's going to get on
The
board
guns
with
are
that.
there. The guns are
The
there.
guns are
But the
there.
point is the guns are there. But I mean, it looks to me that I'm not saying the American people being unique in this because I've been watching on the sidelines of Australia, New Zealand. I have
Yeah.
this theory about New Zealand, Canada, and Australia being small Anglo countries where
Mhm.
they plant and germinate all of these kinds of propositions. As you I don't really know how to explain it, but for example,
Right.
I heard a couple of months ago that they were using rubber bullets on protesters in Melbourne, and I just saw a couple of days ago they're now using rubber bullets on protesters in the Netherlands. And m- my point is not to single out the United States in this, because it seems like this is something that is endemic across the entire Western world, where people say, "This is our red line. This is the line in the sand. This is our line in the sand." And then when the line is crossed, they're like, "Oh, hold on a sec. Okay, let's just
Yeah.
move that line back.
Yeah,
This is our
exactly.
new line in the
Yeah.
sand."
Mm.
And does it really matter? It seems to me that the federal overreach at this point is unbelievable. I mean, let's just put it simply. You have you have a tech oligarchy that is imposing their will upon the populace at the behest of financial cartels that own everything. You
Mhm.
look at like things like Vanguard and BlackRock. You look at a political structure where pretty much, let's just say, the last election was fishy as frig. I'm trying
Yeah.
to keep my expletives under control. And people just said, well, we know it was stolen, but we'll just accept it
Right.
because, you know,
Right.
our republic is dead and
Mm.
whatever. Do you really see any kind of con let's do you really see any sort of resistance coming to any of this is my question.
Not through conventional political channels. I'm not seeing a lot of that. Trump was really the last hope, but the time the Trump that Trump was instituted as president, it was just too late. There was nothing that we can do. I mean, we've been in a cultural downslide since suffrage or before. So I don't really know what.
Suffrage was the beginning, but the Hart-Celler Act of 1965 basically
Yeah,
was the nail in the coffin. Sorry, go
definitely.
ahead, please.
So I don't know what he possibly could have done. He did make tons of mistakes. I think he could have done more as president, but he wasn't going to be able to bail us out of total widespread cultural degeneracy, secularism. This is a god problem at this point. I don't really know what anybody in government can do. And so in that way, I feel kind of positive about all of this because the anticipatory anxiety of just waiting for your society to crumble is very stressful. So when things did start to accelerate and COVID happened, there was something it was something of relief for me because I'm like, all right, this is how it's going to play out. This is what we're going to do. But in terms of changing things through institutional means, it isn't feasible after the last election. Like what does anybody expect? People think we're going to vote our way out of this? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, exactly. There is no voting your way out of this. This is
No.
kind of where I was going.
No, no, it's absurd. So there is this element of small scale community building and weapons training and self sufficiency. Um, and I think that that is a really positive force in the United States. But the people that are doing things like this in their minds, they're living in a post America headspace. And I think that that's what we need to do. People are still talking, save America, vote DeSantis 2024. It's like none of this matters. What matters is your
It's
nuclear family, your small
it's
community.
theater, is what you're saying.
Yeah. your ability to
Uh,
feed yourself and your family. And this is why I really like Owen Benjamin, because he has a totally self-sustaining farm operation up here, and I've been out there. It's incredible. It's enough food to feed his family, and he kept telling me, like, because I'm very black pilled, and he has no tolerance for despair, and he kept telling me, like, Rebecca, scarcity, it's not real. The entire concept of scarcity, it's invented. You can have abundance through self-sufficiency. And that, I think about that when I'm feeling really low. I'm like, we can do this. The government can come and they can try to kill us, but they are highly incompetent. I don't want to underestimate their level of malice, 'cause that's what I did in the last election. I just thought they were going to be too incompetent to steal an election. But I don't think that they would be capable of a gun grab in the way that they were able to in Australia
well,
or New Zealand.
I think, to be honest, in the last election, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think the
Oh, of course.
last election, what they did is they stole it out front and center.
Yeah.
I think it was like it could be Shakespeare, it could be something else. I'm not as trained as others in classic literature, but there is a canard where, for example, you don't kill a king in the shadows. You kill him in front of the entire court so everyone can see.
Mhm.
And that kind of resonated with me after the last election, where they took it and they showed everyone they took it, and they said, what are you going to do?
Right.
What are you going to do? You can't do anything. So sit back and suck on it.
Mhm.
And I think this is where you're getting at vis-a-vis there is no political solution to any of this. And
Mm-mm.
I would agree with that. I don't believe there's a political solution.
But isn't
And
there something freeing about
Owen
that?
Benjamin, I've seen his stuff. Well, I haven't seen him for a while. I used to watch him on D Live when he got eviscerated from every other mainstream platform. Where is he? Where is he actually?
Where
Is
does
he
he
doing
stream? I don't
his?
know. He streams on
Yeah.
Instagram sometimes. He pops up. Actually, he's been banned from
I
Instagram.
got booted off of Instagram.
You
I got
did?
booted off of Instagram. Yeah, and all of my stuff on Instagram literally was me. I go out and I help injured birds. There was
Yeah.
nothing political on my Instagram. It was literally like taking a seagull and removing rubbish, beer can 6-pack plastic thingies. I don't know what you call those.
Oh.
Stuff like that. And I got booted from Instagram a month ago. And I'm like,
Ugh.
why? And
Because
then
that's
yeah,
preposterous.
I know it's because it's me. Because it's me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So and there
I
was
don't even
nothing
know where
I
he is anymore. BitChute maybe? But he pops up from time to time, and then, he lives around here, so I go up to his farm every once in a while, and, but he has found freedom in being banned. And I
mm,
think that that's the way we need to think about this. There's a community of dissidents. And is there anything freer that frees you more than having your reputation just absolutely obliterated in the public sphere? I can say whatever I want. And who has that freedom to really say whatever you're thinking, whatever you believe, without fear of losing your job or social consequences? It's kind of incredible.
yeah, but a lot of people don't have that luxury, I would say, because a lot of people
Yeah.
have mortgages, a lot of people have bills to pay, debt, they have credit
Yeah.
cards. So, I mean, in that sense, I would say you're lucky. I mean,
Yeah, I
and
do
I
feel
would say
lucky. Yeah.
I am as well. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I live abroad, and I am in the process of moving back to the motherland, as it were. I don't feel welcome anymore on the North American continent,
Huh.
and I'm moving back to Mother Europe, as it were. And the reason I am is because I don't feel that I have any kind of future, as it were, in North America. And
That's grim, but also positive. I think we talked about this on my show last time, but what do you think Americans should do? Because we're somewhat rootless in that most Americans are this European amalgamation of DNA, and we don't strongly identify with our home countries. But now that this America project has clearly failed, we just kind of feel like, what do we do? And so we're building these small communities based in rugged individualism, and I'm like, these are Enlightenment principles. The same thing is going to happen that happened to America if we continue to do this. And so I do have this urge to return to England, but I just like, what do I show up there? I'm like,
Well,
all right,
I mean,
I live
I'll
here
be
now.
honest. I'll be honest. I mean, because the thing is so for example, weirdly enough, my paternal line has been in Cleveland, Ohio, or the
Huh?
outskirts of it for almost 200 years.
Really?
Bizarrely, and I've never been to Cleveland. It's weird because you don't even have to pay these people to like Ancestry or whatever the other companies are.
Yeah.
You can go to gravesite.com or gravesite.net. I don't know what it's called. And you just go from your grandparent to the grandparent to the grandparent to the grandparent and
Right.
in the grave sites, right? Because it's all and
Hmm.
it's all for free. And I knew that my paternal line was through Cleveland, but my maternal line, my mother is from the UK, so I have that out, which a lot of people don't have. And what you're talking about is insofar as the modification of America and what America is, and it's fine. It is what it is. The funny part is that you'll have people say, "Well, I absolutely don't understand what white people are," until they want to talk about white supremacy. So it's a very weird mix of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was looking at something. I'm trying to find it right now, but I guess what I'm saying is that for those that don't have an out as I do, and because I'm a mutt like everybody else, I guess, in North America. Um, the thing is that I think there has to be some kind of retreat point where people say, okay, where do I want to live? I mean,
Right.
do I want to live in Atlanta where if I look at somebody the wrong way and they kill me, all they have to say is I said a racial expletive and they are cleared of my murder.
Right.
And that's where, because you have to understand now at this point, the federal government and most state governments, the media, academia, uh, we're literally living in an occupied society at this point.
Right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely.
does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. And then we can't discount the possibility that we're going to be actual political prisoners at some point. I could be in Kootenai jail in like 5 months. Who knows what's going to happen over here? And so I am afraid of that of that possibility.
Mm.
But I just don't know where I would be better off. That's the thing.
It's funny. The Kootenai is it's a region that goes up into British Columbia as well. It's just you spell it differently. The
Oh, really?
spelling is with a Y in Canada. It's with
Ah,
an I in Washington State.
huh.
Just throwing that out there. It's just
It's your
useless
First
trivia.
Nations territory.
It's useless trivia that nobody will care about. Not at
I
all.
don't know. People around here might.
Yeah, maybe, but it is the Kootenai region goes across the border, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's just spelled differently. Is all I'm
Huh.
saying. And anyone who's not from the Pacific Northwest, nobody will give a shit about that. So let's just put it into perspective. Now, let's talk about your feelings going forward. How do you think vis-a-vis? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about, for example, you've left Seattle. Thank thank Jesus. You've left Seattle and you've moved to Idaho. How has your life changed?
Um, well, there was always this fear when I lived in Seattle that I know it's paranoid, but I was starting to think that I was gonna get murdered there because I was getting recognized on the street and stuff. And a few times I saw like really violent like I saw some guy that was wearing a hat getting just the shit kicked out of him on YouTube. Like I saw a video of it and I look and in the background I can see my apartment complex. And I was like,
Jesus.
"Ugh, okay." Like, so it was that threat of violence, and then it was, I can never have kids here. At that time, I wasn't really based on homeschooling, and so I was thinking, like, if I send my kids to public school around here, they're gonna end up indoctrinated freaks. They made all the, 8th grade boys in Seattle public schools stand up and take a pledge not to rape, and so this was
Did
kind of
they,
at
did
the
they make them wear dresses and high heels at the same time?
probably,
I
yeah.
would imagine they probably did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I'm seeing this, and it's the beginning of my political genesis, and I'm not totally like, "I'm gonna homeschool my kids, I wanna homestead," and things like that, but I was like, "This can't happen." Like, I cannot send this is child abuse, sending your kid to some government institution to be indoctrinated and turned against their parents, that's asinine, and so I always knew that I wasn't gonna do that, and it just became, this thing of fearing for my safety, and so I moved to Idaho, and my life has changed so drastically because I just have a feeling of safety and security, which for a new mom, that's really, really important. And the police here know what's up. Like, I had somebody sending me pictures of my house when I moved to North Idaho,
Yeah,
and
I
I was
remember you
really
telling me about that.
freaked. Oh, it was
I
just terrible.
remember.
I mean,
Yeah.
but it was pictures from Google. They weren't outside my house, and so I couldn't do anything about it. But the police did tell me, go to your neighbors who I hadn't met yet and tell them what's up in case any hanky panky is happening in the neighborhood. They can at least notify you, and we're on it, and we'll monitor your house every once in a while and stuff. And so I went to my neighbors on both sides, and I was like, listen, I have a conservative YouTube channel, and this is my name on YouTube, and this is what I do, and this is what's going on in my life. And they all just acted like they would help me bury a body. Just first time I met them, they were like, that's great. We are locked and loaded
I
over
love
here.
the analogy. Not gonna lie.
It was just fantastic. And these are people that I've never met before, and they just they really showed up and made me feel like if we see anything happening outside of your house, we're here. We've all got AR-15s, and then when the Antifa stuff was happening, people were literally patrolling the streets. Like my neighbors with all these kids, they got their Kevlar vests on and their guns, and they're just walking up and down the street all night. And it just makes me feel like if anything goes down, at least we're somewhat prepared. I mean, I don't know that we could really resist the government, but it makes me feel like we can deal with riffraff, and that's reassuring.
Where do you think the Antifa? So, for example, like Antifa would be something that I would have ascribed to 1930s Germany, and it's
Hmm.
not something that I would have ever have. It's not something I would ever even thought would have touched the North American continent up until 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, where do you think that this has come? I mean, for me, I honestly believe that we're in the midst of a Bolshevik slash Maoist. So a lot of people have this. I think we're at a loss for political definitions at this point. I don't believe that the old definitions of right and left work anymore.
mm-mm.
And I think that we're in the midst of something that would be akin to a Bolshevik slash Maoist revolution that's
Right.
happening right now. And I think it's being propelled by media as well as by academia. But my point is like, for example, when I brought that up, I brought that previously up about CNN, and let me see if I can find this. And let me see if I can find this. Hold on a sec. Apologize, guys. Boom! I've got too many of these things open up, so I've got it ready. So my question is that it seems to me that we're living in some sort of like neo-Maoist slash Bolshevik revolution that's amalgamating both of them, and
Hmm.
it's not only on the streets that and you've got an entire generation, because if you take a look at most of the people, it's like, for example, like Kyle Rittenhouse, it's almost as if you take shots at Antifa, you're going to hit a pedophile, right?
I
So,
know.
the current gentleman that drove his SUV of peace through a parade in Wisconsin, who's out on bail, mind you, out
He
on
is.
bail, yeah, out on bail, mind you. He's also a pedophile who said, "Well, what did he say? He was raping a child, but he was a pimp, and he put her on the street. Well, she be a hoe. She be a hoe. So I don't rape no children. She'd be a hoe. The thing was is like, let me just share this with you, with the thing. Even on but you have to understand all of these avenues of media are literally almost spokes within this entire, I don't know, Maoist Bolshevik revolution. So now I'm not even joking. Mass killings under communist regime. This article is considered for deletion according to Wikipedia's deletion
Oh
policy.
my God.
No, 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 no force, no political force in the last 100 years has overseen more people being killed than communism. Now, this literally mass killings under communist regimes on Wikipedia is this article is being considered for deletion in accordance with Wikipedia's deletion policy. So it's
Absurd.
not, no, it's not only absurd, it's evil. It's
Oh yeah.
evil. Because I mean, what I'm trying to say is that once we see these sorts of things and they're happening, everyone will say, well, it's George Soros. Yeah, of course, he's paying for a lot of this, and he's also funding the installation of DAs across the United States, which is very, very important. And I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to that. But
Um,
what are your thoughts on where is this coming from, and how has it germinated to a point where it's basically the weeds are threatening to overthrow and eat up all of the
sure.
plants?
Sure. First of all, he is not out on bail. I was horrified for a second. He's on $5 million. I can't believe they
Five
even
million.
posted, but he's not out. So
Oh, he's not yet. Okay,
it
sorry.
was for
I
a
thought he
previous
was.
crime. I think that live chat just
No, he was
recording.
out. No, no, he was out for $1,000 for trying
Right.
to run over his ex girlfriend.
Oh my goodness, that's absurd.
So he was out on bail, $1,000 bail, trying to run over his ex girlfriend. And the anyway, sorry, please.
Um, I think that the left has a superior ability to bide their time. And Saul Alinsky talks about this. It's you have to get the power in a subversive way before you take the power. And that's really what the left has done. The long march to the institutions was ages ago, but you didn't see this revolutionary spirit in academia as profound as it is today, even when I graduated from college in like 2010. I went to University of Missouri where the Melissa Click famous Melissa Click incident happened, and I was getting some subtle indoctrination, but it wasn't outright straight up communist propaganda like they're
Mm,
doing right now. And I got some of that in government education, but it wasn't so in your face. It wasn't killing the king in the court, so to say. But I think what the left has done was they did this subtle propaganda, and the real thing was instituting a disconnected, atomized, multiracial society before they really turned up the volume on propagandizing the youth. And by that time, it's not like we're going to be able to circle the wagons, because what do you have in common with your Muslim neighbor in Seattle or whatever the fuck? Like, living on my floor in my apartment complex, it's like Muslim guy, like homosexual theater teacher, and then single woman that I've never talked to. It's like I don't have anything in common with any of these people. I don't even know them. I've lived here for years, and that's what the left wanted. They wanted this society that when they really started pushing the communist propaganda, that there would not be an effective backlash. And I think in that way, they've been highly successful. So although this subversive nature has always been present, um, they were really able to separate and divide and create a low trust society so that we don't have a lot of recourse. And that's where we are right now. And so on the right, I think we're a little bit more reactionary, and I think that that is going to be dangerous. We need to be taking this time to regroup, to understand the left. I shouldn't even this left right dichotomy is such bullshit. I shouldn't even use it
No, no, I
anymore.
agree. We need new vocabulary to describe
Because I don't even call myself
the
a
environment
conservative
we're in.
anymore. It's
Well,
am I a conservative? I'm not. I'm not a Republican. What am I conserving? What am I doing? I'm on the dissident right, I guess.
conserving twerking.
I know. And so I don't even have a label for myself. And that's something that the left is better at as well, using terms. And George Orwell talks about this extensively in 1984, and how the genesis of language is used to control the population in ways that they don't even understand. If you don't have a word for something, how can you talk about it? How can you rally
How can you
against it?
imagine it?
How can
Yeah.
you even imagine it? Exactly. And we're in that place on the right where we need new terms. You're right about that. We need to understand each other. We need to also see that neocon over there that is supporting Caitlyn Jenner and big government and all this other garbage, is an enemy, just like that communist, just like that AOC or whatever. Like, all of these people are enemies. And so abandoning this left right dichotomy, abandoning this hope that we're going to use the system to change the system, I think that's really the first step. And we need to take a step back here, and we need to regroup and find a way for us to communicate with one another and be a cohesive unit, um, before we can take any steps forward, because
Do
there's
you
too
do
much
you
disunion
believe
on the right.
do you believe that there's any hope for the United States to be a cohesive country ever again?
Oh, as it is now, no. I mean, the Civil War set such a horrible precedent for this, because it just shows that if you are a group of united people that disagree with the state of the nation, that you have no right to not be a part of this voluntary union. You can't opt
That
out.
yeah, yeah, that's I've thought the same thing about the Civil War, but sorry, please continue.
No, I mean, but that means to me that there isn't really a feasible path for secession. And I know we talk about secession movements a lot, but it's like we've been here before. It didn't work last time, and they
Secession was basically answered in 1861.
yeah, there's just nothing we
So
can do about that. So I think the best way to do this right now is to community build on a local level and kind of fly under the radar until things fall apart in this country organically. And if you look at the fall of Rome, it took centuries. But America's not
centuries.
going to be like that. It's not going to be like
Yeah.
that. This is especially COVID has just absolutely accelerated the situation that we're in. And it's like, how much time do we have left? I don't think that this country is going to be failing for 500 years. I mean, we haven't even been a country for that long. I think this is going to happen relatively quickly, if not in our generation and the next generation. And we need to have self-sustaining infrastructure to try to persevere through the immediate collapse.
Mm. Now, do you have geographical areas you think that will fare better than others?
I mean, white people do pretty well in cold weather. Like, I know
Like
that
South
there's a
Chicago?
no, yeah, we should all move to South Chicago. But I know Texas has this big secession thing going on, and as much as I love that spirit, I'm like, I'm not moving to fucking Texas. It is too hot. I will not do it. It's filled with Mexicans. There's no way. So I think that people of Western European descent do well in Midwestern regions. And that's something else that America has on its side. It's this geographical mass. It's really hard to control people over these vast swaths of nothingness. And I drove across the country, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that. In Wyoming, it's nothing for hundreds of miles, just hundreds of miles of nothingness. And I think people forget that about America. In New Zealand, everyone's just packed in there. In Australia, everybody's kind of in coastal regions, so it's
Yeah.
easier to
And
control the populace.
95% of Canada is 100 miles from the US border, by the way, population
Seriously?
wise. Yeah, yeah. Not maybe not
Wow.
95. I'm probably getting it wrong. So there's going to be somebody in the chat saying wrong. Let's just say 80%
Okay, okay.
of the Canadian population is within 100 miles of the U.S. border.
Right. So
Same.
this
It's like it's Australia North basically.
right, right. I mean, we're not totally protected in vast wilderness. But historically we've been able to do pretty well in these regions. And I know it's not ideal. Like I've said on my channel before, I don't want to be cleaning up goat shit. Like I want to be in a Parisian cafe sipping an espresso and watching passersby. Like that's what I truly want. But this is not the life that any of us are going to be able to live. So we're going to have to readjust our expectations for living. And it sucks and nobody wants to do that. But that's just kind of where we are.
It's funny. I was in Paris a couple of weeks ago, and the front runner for the presidential elections, and he hasn't even declared his candidacy, is a Jewish Algerian man, and
What?
he is yeah,
I gotta see this.
and he's literally how would you call him in parlance? He's based in the sense where he's like,
Hmm.
we're not going to take any more reduction in the Gallic sphere. We are going to. I can't talk about this on the platform we're talking about, but this guy literally, France is going. Marine Le Pen is not right enough now for France at this
Huh.
point. So I mean, it is changing. I mean, you go to Paris, and there are certain places. I was living in Paris for a month and a half near the Sacré-Cœur at the. If anyone's been
Oh,
to
that's a
Paris, at the
beautiful region.
it is, but I mean,
What's it like now? I
part
haven't been in a few years.
it's like being in the Congo, and
What?
yeah. The if anyone's interested, this station you can look it up. The metro station is the Chateau Rouge, that the Red House, and he this front runner basically at this point who hasn't even declared his candidacy right now is he makes Mary Le Pen look like a Swedish socialist,
Wow.
and he's a Jewish Algerian. So
What a
France,
strange turn of events.
yeah, well France is a in certain respects I respect them because I mean when I went to Paris in June, and I went there because I thought, well, things are getting better, and I'm slowly extricating myself from the Far East, and as I said, I'm going back to the motherland soon. And the thing was is that after I got there, like, oh, hold on a second, you're not going to be allowed to be in public places. No
Yeah.
public places for you. No public places for you. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. I can't go to the museums or to a soccer game. I don't like
Right.
soccer. I find soccer just the most annoying sport where you touch somebody and like, and
And
fall
so much
around like a
running too.
yeah.
So
It's
much
like
running.
okay.
The museums
But the
thing,
thing,
that sucks. That sucks.
no, but it got worse because, and then 2 weeks later, like, oh yeah, and now you're not allowed to go to any kind of service other than a supermarket. And that included outdoor cafes, and it's summertime in Paris. So they have it like as the British have pub culture, the French have cafe culture.
Mhm.
So what the French did was, and I thought it was pretty awesome, is France is like it's like Tokyo. It's like it's very different from America or Canada or Australia, where cities are built around the automobile, right? So you can't you burn a gallon of gas to buy a gallon of milk,
Right.
whereas these places there's a lot of pedestrian only
Right.
streets. So what they did was is all of these French people, they took their picnic baskets and their picnic blankets, and what they did is they went on all of these streets that had all of these cafes that had police, mind you, walking around asking people for their COVID passports on their phones, and you had to produce a QR code in order to be able. And if not, the fines were like, I think they were something like 400 euros for the first offense.
Oof.
So what happened was, is all of these French people, they ended up having picnics right on the pedestrianized roads with cafes on either side, just protesting the fact that they weren't able to basically be human anymore because they hadn't take the mystery juice that now I should point out. And this is something because while I was there and I had a Swedish friend come visit me in Paris and in London, you need a PhD to travel at this point if you're not vaccinated. And what's happening right now is that you have an entire system that is forcing you to take something. But now what they're saying is that after 6 months, you're no longer vaccinated after your second jab.
Right,
So you,
right.
you get you
It's the
get two
booster
of them.
thing, you know?
Now you have to have a booster every 6 months for the rest of your. This is subscription level medicine. It's
Yeah.
like a video game. It's like a video game with, you know, you've got to pay the subscription every 6 months now in order to have a life. And I would give the French a thumbs up in the fact that they were one of the original people that were actually, because in the United States a lot of people have this sort of predilection toward, cheese eating surrender monkeys, and they have this, oh, the French, we don't like the French. Well, the French, blah, blah. If you actually think about America as a country, the French were the first allies, the country. A Frenchman was the guy that basically laid out the city plan for Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
The French have a very strong cultural, historical influence on the United States. And I'm wondering where this particular sort of animosity toward France comes from in the United States. I don't know. I don't really know. But anyway, the point is that a lot of countries like Germany, I was in Hamburg and Berlin. These people just fucking rolled over. They
Yeah.
literally rolled. They're like, "Can I spread my cheeks? How far can I spread them for you?"
I
Right?
know,
Can I?
I
Can
know,
I?
it's
I
remarkable.
haven't spread them far enough. Come on. Maybe you need to get some sort of mechanical device to spread them even further. And and
And the
and
Germans
and
would create a super efficient mechanical butt spreading
oh, they would.
device.
I
They
just like just spread them as far as you possibly can. And
Um, they're rule
and so
followers that, that they're,
yeah, with to a
famously.
point of yeah, but to a point of absolute derision. So yeah, I think that there has to be. I mean, we can. I think it's Thanksgiving, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think we've been going for about 43 minutes, I think. Are you good for another 15, or
Yeah,
is
sure.
that okay? My question then to you is getting onto the COVID mandates, and we're not allowed to talk about COVID itself or whatnot. But my question to you would be then is, what do you think? Because this is obviously now. Now I should say this, and let me see if I can find it as we're talking. The COVID mandates that are happening right now. Um, what do you believe is the end goal of this?
Um, I think it's population control. I think that at the end of this, Computing Forever has done such excellent work on this. I think that the Klaus Schwab, the Great Reset, is the ultimate goal. It's population control based on some sort of climate climate initiative. I think, like, trying to get us to eat what they want and to consume in the way that they want us
You'll
to
live in the
consume.
pod, you'll eat the bugs, and you'll
Mm,
own nothing and be happy.
right. I think that is the ultimate thing, but it's not presenting in the way people would expect. It's this piecemeal thing. I think the first few things that they want us to do is, as a society, to kind of compulsively acquiesce. And that's why this booster shot thing is important for them, because they want us to continue to acquiesce, to follow the rules based on government advice that's not based in science, and to just get used to doing that. And then they'll start to roll out things. There will be supply shortages. There will be mandates in other arenas about what we can do with our children, what we can do with our own bodies, how we can teach our children and school them. And it's just a preparation event. So everybody thinks COVID kind of is the main show, but I think this is a precursor to something much more menacing.
I 100% agree with you. What I have right now, excuse me, on the screen for people to see is that I've arrived back in Tokyo, and Tokyo is a city of 38 million people, which is larger than the population of Canada or Australia or many European countries. And if you take a look at the arc of this, it's pretty much down to new cases, not deaths. New cases today were five.
Oh
Now,
my God, who cares?
no, but that, my point is that the one thing about the Japanese is they found graphene in the Moderna. They found several and the Pfizer also. They found problems within the vaccines and they banned them. Millions and millions of the jabs. So what I'm saying to you is that this country, which everyone's going to say, oh yeah, you're a weeb, you just want to be part of Japan. No, I'm not. Obviously not. And I'm leaving. The thing is what I do recognize is that this is a homogenous country, and as inept as their government is, and they are inept in so many different ways. I don't get the feeling that they are a government that hates their people the way American government, Canadian
Right,
government,
right.
British government, Dutch government hate their people and wish them malice. So, for example, they haven't overcounted their death rates based on comorbidity. They've never done that. So anyone can do this right now. All you have to do is put in Tokyo or Japan, and you put in COVID or deaths. You can see it yourself. It is literally today there were 5 new cases of people that are infected, not deaths. I don't even know when the last time there was a death. My point being is that they're now trying to subterfuge the entire argument now was well, how is this happening? And they're trying to say, well, Japanese people, and this is true, but Japanese people when they get on a train or a bus, they're like, "Hey, what you doing? I got my hoe. She been coming over to my house. She yacht." That's not going on. That they're a quiet people, so they're trying to say is
Right.
that in public places they're not exuberant, as it were.
Yeah.
And but this just doesn't comport with the reality of just look at this. Look at this chart. 5 people in a city of almost 40 million have been tested positive. And this city is like the Japanese are extreme in their data collection. They're pretty much the same as Germans almost, I would say,
Right.
in that sense. So um just saying, just
That's
yeah.
definitely true. And I think that that's an important distinction to make. Although there is a lot of government control and there's something there's not a lot of freedom in some Asian nations, but they don't have the same kind of disdain for the people in Korea, in China, probably in North Korea, but not in South Korea, in China, in Japan. And
Yeah.
I think that we need to keep in mind that it's not that the American government hates its people, it's that the American government hates white people. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's why we're not seeing these other issues in Japan. And that's a funny point about them not being so exuberant. We also have to remember that in Asian nations, this mask thing was already culturally integrated long before COVID.
Oh,
People,
absolutely. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
it was the whole point in Asia was that in Asia they were more along the lines of I've got a cold and I'm trying to be polite and not cough
right,
on you. So
exactly. Yeah,
so the
it's an
mask
honor
mandate is
based
not.
respect
Yeah.
culture. That,
Yeah, it's exactly.
yep.
So the point is that I think that I'm having problems believing the numbers elsewhere.
Hmm.
That they're saying that oh well, we were going to have a spike of a million new jabs over the next 2 months. I think France has said that. What was it, France or one of these countries saying it's not 6 months after your last jab that you are unvaccinated again. It's I think 5 months, or it's just yeah. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
it
they don't care
is
about natural immunity. That should tell us everything that we need to know about the insidious nature of the vaccine.
w-
People are like, how do you know that there's something in there that's going to hurt you? Well, I don't, but why are they trying to give it to me when I've already had COVID? I'm already antibody positive. Like, why am I mandated to get the vaccine? Why
a
should I get it?
very good example of this is there was a French Canadian woman. And if there is an indigenous European group of people in North America, it's the French
French Canadian.
Canadians. They've been in French they've been there longer than anybody. And she I think she had become a famous radio personality in Paris. Flew back to Canada and wanted to I don't know see her family. And she had already had COVID. She had natural immunity. And the Canadian government said when she hit the airport, we're like, well, we don't care if you've had COVID. You either have to get the vaccination, go to one of our quarantine centers and wait for it, or get out. And this was a Canadian citizen, and they threw her back to Paris. They bounced her back to Paris because she wouldn't get the vaccination because she already had natural immunity. So uh, our governments, I honestly believe at this point, you have to understand we're not living in societies anymore where our best interests are looked out for by those that mean to rule us.
Right.
And
Right.
this is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow.
Mhm.
And a lot of, and I'm not trying to like go against like people that are what's the blue back the blue. But if you take a look at what the blue is doing all around the Western world, they are pretty much backing up the political class and shooting rubber bullets at people that just don't want to be forced into their homes for the rest of their
Mhm.
lives
Yeah.
or having to take mystery juice in their arm. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of people have had to take the vaccine uh, out of fear of losing their job, their economic livelihood, and all that sort of thing. I'm not trying to disparage any of those people. What I'm saying is that we
Why?
are
They had a choice. They had a choice too.
well, they had a choice, but I mean, a choice what to be homeless? I
No,
wouldn't I won't I wouldn't go that far.
I wouldn't say that they all, there's an element of coercion here, but I think a lot of people that have taken the vaccine out of fear of losing their jobs, they aren't facing homelessness. They're facing an uncomfortable degree of downsizing that, as Western materialists, they are not going to do. I still think that people could be standing firm against this, even in the face of some degree of economic despair. And I know that I've set up my life in a way that it doesn't really matter if I get the vaccine, but under no circumstances am I getting that vaccine. Under no circumstances. My child will never get the vaccine. Going it's not going to happen. And I feel like some people whose jobs hinge on it also could take that stance, and they would just have to regroup, reorganize. They'd have to downsize. They'd have to live in a smaller house. They'd have to accrue less debt. They'd have to eat differently. But Americans especially don't want to do this. They don't want to do it. It's a comfort thing.
All right, I would agree. And winding it down because it is Thanksgiving, and I really appreciate your time. Where do you think vis-a-vis this is actually going? Because I don't believe this is anything to do with a virus. I don't believe this has anything to do with our governments having our best interests at heart. I don't believe that this has anything to do with anything other than a naked power grab.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
as we wind it down, because it is Thanksgiving, and I wanted to say thank you very much for your time. Where do you think this is headed, and what do you think people can do insofar as not only educate themselves but fortify themselves? And you just kind of gave a pretty good explanation if you want to add on to that, and then we'll draw
Sure.
it down. And also, if anybody has any questions in the chat, just we'll give like maybe like a 3 minute question answer
Sure.
section.
Yeah.
Put a Q before your question, and I'll try to find it in the chat. Excuse me.
So I did talk a little bit about self-sustaining, and I think that's the pretty much the only thing that people can do, is try to remove yourself from the system, and that means that means trying to remove yourself from this cash-based society. That means getting out of your mortgage if you can't. I mean, it means downsizing your life and trying to be as self-sufficient as you possibly can. I know that that is really difficult for people, but it's not impossible. And in terms of where this is going, they really have implemented a super effective divide and conquer strategy whereby the unvaccinated class are seen almost universally as like dirty, like filthy, dirty
Pariahs.
pariahs, second class citizens.
Mm.
But there's a white pill in this. What they don't realize is some people have anti authoritarian personality types that rise above and that are energized by becoming a dissident, by becoming a pariah. And some people do really well in the fringes of society. And so we need to circle the wagons with those people. We need to find those people. We need to get together with those people. We need to live in the same geographical region as those people, because this COVID thing, this is not the big show. Whatever's next that's coming is going to be longer. It's going to be darker. It's going to be colder. It's going to be worse than this.
I
I
agree.
don't
I
know what it
agree.
is.
This is the appetizer. We're
It's the
living through the
appetizer.
appetizer right now.
Yeah.
The the,
So we
the
need to get
main the
ready.
main dish is on its way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the way that you can do that, the way that you can become hardy to these kinds of things, I mean, you have to find God. People have to find God. They have to return to their Christian roots. Um, because ultimately, even if you lose in this world, if you're redeemed, then aren't you a victor? And I think we need to get more in that mindset. We need to abandon our worldly materialism and start thinking about being moral, being better. Um, and isn't that really it? I mean, the downfall of Western societies, it has so much to do with secularism.
Mm.
And so I think that, that's the way.
There's a good analogy you could take from this from the Dark Ages is that there were two kinds of people. There were monks and there were warriors, and the monks were basically tasked with being the lifeboat of classical civilization, and
Mhm.
they kept it through Latin, and a lot of what the Christian church was an outpouring at the end of the Roman Empire of preserving the legacy of antiquity. And there are people that are meant to, I guess, hold on to values, and there's people that are meant to fight for those values, and you
Exactly.
don't
That's a
necessarily
good
have to
way.
be both. You don't
No, that's
necessarily,
true.
yeah, exactly.
And if you feel like you are not the kind of person that is a warrior, then what you can do is keep the flame of the West alive. I mean, Paris, the jewel of the West, seems so preposterous now, but this concept of beauty in Western culture and art and literature, um, we can maintain that. We can further that in our own ways. And I've seen a lot of. I think this is really interesting, but within dissident right communities, there's this. Really beautiful artistic expression. Like I'm seeing a lot of impressionist style Western artistry come out of the right. And if you're that kind of person, and that's what you want to do and how you want to contribute, keeping the flame alive, that's a very important job too.
I agree. I agree. Keeping the fire that burns.
Hmm.
I want to say thank you very much for taking your time to come and chat with
Oh,
us
thank you so much for
on
having me. I really
Thanksgiving.
appreciate it.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I mean, we've been talking for years, and finally got you on my channel this time. Is there
Yeah.
anywhere people that would like to? How can they find you?
Sure. I'm on YouTube, Blonde in the Belly of the Beast. I periodically make videos there. I do a podcast with Matt Christensen called The Matt and Blonde Show on Wednesdays and Sundays. Sunday is our live show. And I do a channel about motherhood with Robin Riley. It's called Motherland. I've been banned from all social media. You can find me on Gab. I think I'm blonde_beast on Gab. Oh, do I not even know? And then I'm on Instagram, but it's just it's just mom stuff on Instagram, and I'm blonde_beast1 on Instagram. So, but it's totally apolitical. It's just, you know, house stuff and mom stuff. So,
Mm.
but yeah, thank you so much for having me. That was a good conversation. I love doing conversations like this because in 2016, in the golden era of YouTube, I just used to love sitting down and doing some chores with a stream on, like a cozy stream of two people talking about current events, and I wish we could bring that back to YouTube. Everything's become so structured, and so I just love these kind of free form conversations with people. They're really
Well,
fascinating.
maybe we can. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And
Maybe
thank
we
you,
can.
live chat, for showing up. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really do. And I will take responsibility. I completely got the
Oh
timeline
no, it's
wrong.
okay.
It's my
It's okay.
fault. It's my fault. We did get a super chat, and I want to say thank you very much. It says the Maxwell trial will be buried, and
Oh yeah.
he's talking about the Epstein, and I agree. As has the truck of peace that went through Wisconsin has already been buried. Keep it up. Keep showcasing the corrupt elite. City PD will be the ones that disarm you. Yeah. Get the hell out of the cities. Now, this is the thing that I liked about this
Mhm.
one. Preserve Western culture in physical form, hard copies.
Yep.
Somebody was telling me this the other day that pretty soon you're not going to be able to find hard copies of things that go against narratives. And that's
Oh,
actually
totally.
something I think people
Even children's
should
books and things
recognize.
like that. I was reading a book to my daughter that was written in the 60s, and it was just about this little girl who was she was like, it's called like The Littlest Mommy or something like that, and it's just a whole book
Hmm.
of her pretending to be a housewife to her little dolls. And I was reading it, like my eyes were welling up with tears because it just never would get written now. She plays with the neighbor boys and she makes him pretend dinner, and then she pretend watches her dolls and everything, and everyone's white. I'm like, this is just revolutionary. So things like that, we need to be getting hard copies of even children's books. They're going to memory
I
hole
agree.
all of this stuff.
They're going to memory hole everything. And you
Yeah.
can see this right now, people. Seriously, look at the news media right now. One of the largest, it's literally the first truck of peace that I can think of in the United States that mowed down
Yep.
almost 100 people. It killed, as you said, I don't know how many. I think it killed at least a child. You said more than one.
Yeah, I think 30
And
people were
it's
injured.
already memory hold. It's already been
Yeah.
memory hold, and all they're talking about is Kyle Rittenhouse being basically a satanic lieutenant, a capo of President Trump. This is the world we're in. Rebecca, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for being here, and I wanted to say thank you very much for all of you for having spent your evening or your morning or wherever you are, your Thanksgiving with us. And we'll be back soon. I do have a few irons in the fire. I will be talking to Winston Serpenza very soon, David Icke. And I actually
Cool.
have, I got an email from Gazi Koto, one of the leaders of a black supremacist group that was arrested in Atlanta the other day because they were pretty much protesting vaccine mandates.
Huh.
And while he despises the cave dwellers, as he calls them, or as he calls us, we might have him on here very shortly. Thank you very much, Rebecca. It's been a pleasure, and we will be chatting soon.
Bye, guys.